I'm Jennifer and welcome to my library. It's kind of a jungle today because I thought it would look nice. My plant is usually not this close to all my books. I am a chaotic neutral mechanical engineer who's really into permaculture and wants to talk about books. So let's talk about books. We are talking about sketchbooks because I wanted to share some of my creative projects this year. I wanted to explore a little bit of my own writing, and I wanted to force myself to make a video every month where instead of talking about books, we talk about some of my personal creative projects. And this month, I want to talk to you about my sketches, my literature-related sketches. I've shared tiny pieces of this with this channel, and on Discord, I did share my progress with one of these projects. So now I can put all of this together and put it somewhere. My history with drawing in, maybe about like 2017, 2018, probably 2017, I decided that I wanted to learn how to draw. I really wanted to make an effort to be able to draw my own ideas because I really wanted to make comics and I wanted to be able to illustrate my own stories. So it definitely came from a writing perspective. I needed to learn mechanically how to draw. I'm not a naturally artistic person when it comes to drawing. So I definitely had to set aside the time, get a sketchbook out, and learn some fundamentals about visual art. To be perfectly frank, I am still not very good at it, but I am definitely capable now of doing some things that I wouldn't have been capable of doing before. This was like practicing every single day. Okay, so this is my very first attempt. Try to draw more, October 2017. And this is where I started. I started with references from Instagram. You can see how rough it is. I had no concept of how much work it took to draw, but I actually got more patience over time. Look at this chain link. Good Lord, I wouldn't even try that today. That is how it started. I still think that this is such a cool spread, genuinely. And I'm like, how did I start so cool? Yeah, I would just pick a picture off of Instagram and draw it. That is where I started. From that, it's probably not gonna look like I've made very much progress at all because I was really trying off of references to draw what I saw, and I limited my materials. I had a very specific thing that I was going for. And since then I've explored tons of styles. Yeah, so you can see I was kind of exploring all sorts of things. This is such a cursed Dana Scully right here. Oh my god. And then we get into I'm trying to design my own characters. I still would love to write a story with that. But anyway, so all of that was so that I could help illustrate my own stories. I have done that and I would love to share these projects with you as well. I haven't talked about them a ton. I've mentioned them again briefly. I wrote a few children's books. I think the only one that's officially self-published and available on Kindle is Itchy Witchies. But I've also written Void Cat Helps Bake a Cake, and I can show you what it looks like. This is what this story looks like. So this definitely has a very, very simplified style. This was something where I had to kind of try to be consistent with the design of the kitchen and the design of the cat. I'm really happy that I actually made something. So this is the first children's story that I illustrated. And then I decided to revisit a children's story that I wrote when I was a child and that my parents thought was good. So I was like, okay, this is a good story. I rewrote it when I was in college and I tried to illustrate it, but I was not skilled enough. And then I endeavored to go back to it as an adult after having some more drawing experience. I'm also really proud of this because this was an immense amount of work. I learned how to like pick a color palette. I again tried to be very consistent with my designs. I'm not very consistent with my designs. Mitch, our main witch, there are clearly some inconsistencies, but I'm again really proud of this. I am talking way too much about my other artistic endeavors, but I do want to hear if you want videos about my children's writing. I also have this one, which I did share the progress of this in a vlog. And so here you can see more of a watercolor illustration style compared to digital. This is about Gordon, who, if you've watched this channel for a while, you will know this is my cat who died in the summer. And I loved him so much. So, oh my gosh, yeah, so here you can see some early art for that Itchy Witchies book. It's horrifying. So in 2024, I decided to try Peachtober. If you're not involved in like the online art community, you might not know that October is the month where there are a lot of drawing challenges. It started with something called Inktober, which was a series of spooky prompts, and the goal was to draw an ink drawing every single day in October. And then there were a lot of spin-offs for different people creating their own version. And the one that I've followed is Peachtober, which is hosted by Furry Little Peach, an artist online. So I started a new sketchbook for this, and I decided to do a book theme after a certain period of time. So we'll start with the initial sketches. I have Daisy, and I selected Daisy Miller to go along with this. I have read Daisy Miller, but it was a long time ago. It was partially on a flight back from Italy, I believe, and I wasn't very engaged in that book. This is a failed sketch for Sparkle. I really especially didn't like the eyelashes. Then I decided to do a set of sparkly vampire teeth. The book associated with that is Twilight. I have definitely read other vampire books, but when you think of Sparkle, you think of the Twilight vampires because they sparkle in the sunlight. But I didn't want to draw like Edward sparkling in the sunlight. For paw, I drew a monkey's paw, and I actually read the monkey's paw story in order for me to have read it for this illustration. So for sky, I really wanted to do a picture of the Northern Lights. The Northern Lights reminds me of the Golden Compass. I really do like how this turned out. I did not know how I would be able to achieve a Northern Lights look. I adore this. I think this is so cute. This is a fawn for the Gift of the Deer. I love the Gift of the Deer. It's one of my favorite books from 2023. Then for the prompt sketch, I did this stack of sketches, and this was inspired by the book Idaho. I did take a photograph of the book Idaho with this other book, Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain or something like that. And these are inspired by that book, which was in that photograph of Idaho, because one of the characters in Idaho is learning how to draw in prison. Now, this prompt was Bud, and this was my initial attempt. It's supposed to be a tulip. I just hated it, like how it looked. It did not look like a tulip to me. So then I did this version, and I think this looks a lot more of what I was trying to get at, but I still feel like something's a little bit off about it. But this is inspired by Pluto, the manga, because tulips are an important part of that story. This is probably my favorite image for the whole thing. For the prompt River, And the book that I selected was Across the River and Into the Trees by Ernest Hemingway. I don't know, there's just something about this that looks so special to me. Even though it's like a little cartoony, I really like it. The prompt apricot, I chose Grow a Little Fruit Tree, and I just drew some apricots. Grow a Little Fruit Tree is a book about how to grow your own small fruit trees in your yard, and very inspired by that. I have grown plenty of little fruit trees in my yard, so I really recommend that book if you are interested in permaculture especially. Pixel. I don't like this. I don't like this image at all. I chose Snow Crash as the inspiration. Snow Crash is set in this like cyberpunk world, and one of the characters skateboards, and so I decided I'd draw a pixelated skateboard. I copied this exactly from something on the internet that had the exact amount of pixels that I would need, because I don't know how to turn an image into pixels in my brain. I also really love this image. This is based off of the Pomo calendar for the seasons. The prompt was wheel, and I chose the book Enough for All as my inspiration. And Enough for All is about indigenous food culture in the Pomo and Coast Miwok regions. So you basically have your dry season and your wet season. Will you guess what this is for? The prompt, I think, was Earth, and I chose the operating manual for Spaceship Earth. And I really like how the Earth is represented here as well. Operating manual for Spaceship Earth is one of the weirdest books that I have read. The prompt cape, and I drew basically fan art from Witch Hat Atelier. I think this is Quifrey's cape. One of my favorite illustrations from this as well. This is for the prompt burrow, and I drew Mole from The Wind in the Willows, which is one of my favorite books. I love this. This is also directly taken from one of the illustrations in The Wind in the Willows. And he is whitewashing his burrow, and I just think it's so cute. This is when we really start to fall off. I fell behind, and then I didn't like this series of illustrations very much, so I kind of lost my motivation fully. So this truncates before the end of the challenge. The prompt was lamp, so I decided to do an illustration of the lamplighter from The Little Prince. I don't particularly like this illustration. It just doesn't do what I wanted, but I love the section of The Little Prince that talks about the lamplighter. It's one of my favorites. For Owl, I have this illustration of Ava from Ava's Treetop Festival, or whatever it's called. She is an owl in a children's series. I have read 2 of those books because I put them in the Little Free Library or got them from the Little Free Library. So I just drew her. I don't like that illustration at all. The next prompt was slow, and I drew kind of an ent. I was trying to draw an ent, and honestly, I found the references for ents challenging, like really challenging. I just drew a tree. It's got some Spanish moss on it. It's kind of got a face. And then I fell off, and I did no more after that. That is the Peachtober that I attempted this October, or last October. I hope you enjoyed me sharing a little bit more about the other things that I've been interested in outside of reading. Let me know if you're interested in hearing more about my illustration endeavors. I haven't been doing a ton of it recently, but every once in a while I do get inspired to work on a story that requires illustration. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think would also enjoy it. Consider liking and subscribing, and I will be back again soon. I've done Scott Pilgrim fan art, I think. Here's some of my Scott Pilgrim fan art. And so we have Knives. Oh, poor Knives. And our dumb Scott. Oh my gosh, I love this spread. This is Breath of the Wild God, my great flame blade, I loved. I miss that in Tears of the Kingdom.